Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Ted, hanging out with some of the colleagues here.
Dave.
Nate.
And today we have a request from Dr. Dark TNT, and he wants to know, or she, how do you spice up an undead encounter?
It's kind of a unisex name, Dr. Dark TNT. Could be a he, could be a she.
So we don't want to diss any of our potential female viewers out there. So
So go with the they wanted to know.
we could.
Let's go with that.
All right, they wanted to know.
Yes.
So how do we do it?
How do we do it? I think Ted or Nate said something about ghost peppers and paprika, and so yeah, I guess they're asking about templates and how to make them not all seem alike. So essentially, what I would say you want to do if you have a theme in mind, like they're not just undead, but they're pirate undead or they're orc undead or whatever minotaur undead. You would look at the monster entry, and if there's a feature that makes them that thing, you could just add it.
Right. So you can take, let's suppose we're using skeletons here, and you can have the base skeletal stats and paint the brush liberally over them to have it be an orc or have it be a minotaur.
Yes.
Have it be something else, so that you don't feel like you've got to change the mechanics of the combat, but still make it visually descriptive.
For some reason, I don't know why this is, but it does really seem like for some reason a lot of GMs feel like they mechanically have to change something to make it different. Like
Right.
I ran a game online last week, and basically I had the blood demon theme running throughout it, and every monster I had, I kind of used that theme of it was for a blood cult. The blood lord is the demon prince or demon lord,
Right.
So like I just literally said, okay, I'm going to use a rock, but I just described it as all of its feathers were red and crimson. Anywhere that there was flesh and not feathers was scarred and scabbed over and looked like festering wounds. I took manes, instead of making them small, I made them medium and described them as looking like cadavers that have had all the skin removed. I described them as when they walk, there's a sucking sound, on the ground
Like
from the dried blood. Yeah. I used a
Yokel.
a yokel, which basically looked like melted wax things, and I just described it as being made out of blood instead. Like those players didn't think anything of it. They're not worrying about, well, does it have the right ability to make it a blood demon? Like, what was the mechanic there? No, they're like, it hit me and it's gross. I'm like, I described you get punched in the face by this cadaver thing, and it actually, the hand sticks to you, the fist sticks to your cheek a little bit as the dried blood peels away. Yeah, so really, a lot of it can just be done through your description and visually reskinning it. Now, for whatever reason, this person, they feel like they need to change something mechanically. The first question you have to ask is, well, why? Why do you feel you need to do that?
I have an answer for that.
Okay,
for mine, I had this terrible chaos area with mutated Thri-kreen, and I also had a guy who was a psychic, and he went into this bad area to try and complete a quest, and he never made it out. So I made him a psionic revenant, which basically, when he struck you, when you were stopping him from completing his quest, when he struck you, it felt like you were that first substantial loss in your life. Like maybe it was a pet, maybe it was a relative or something like that. It's like it just happened, like that kind of feeling, like you just lost a piece of something, or you just kind of reopened a troubled past of yours that is kind of like that psychic damage.
So like it happened again.
Yeah, like it happened again. So it left you kind of shaken and disturbed, rather than just doing extra bludgeoning or something damage that a revenant normally does.
So was that psychic damage?
Yeah. So I just made it psychic.
And you just described the damage as being like those memories being stirred up.
Yeah.
Did the revenant already have the ability where it did extra damage?
Yes, the Revenant already had that ability. It was just extra. It was like extra 46 or something like that.
So all you did was, so you just reskinned it. Is that what you're telling me?
I reskinned it, but
And change the damage type.
changed the damage type, and I also
You did that to screw barbarians, didn't you?
no,
Caught you. Barbarian of the bear.
There was no
psychic
barbarian.
damage.
Yeah, there was no barbarians in there. What I did it for was
Well, you did it because it was a psionic creature.
yeah, it was a psionic creature that died. It was trying to complete a quest. The players were also trying to complete that same quest, but as far as I'm concerned, when you're holding the quest items and you're refusing to give it to the person that needs them, you're stopping him from completing his needed thing. Revenants are usually revenge spirits, but I just altered it a bit that way as well. So basically, if you stopped it from completing his quest, either by withholding quest items or stopping it from going to the destination,
right?
It considered that was considered part of you being its enemy. You know, it's kind of like opponent, and you know, same thing with revenants is like if you were one of the people that led to the person's demise, it did a tremendous amount of extra damage to you. So in this case, that I reversed it to where it's like if you stopped it from completing its quest that it died trying to complete.
That was a long explanation to say I reskinned the revenant to a psychic monster.
But it wasn't that simple, you know. It wasn't that simple. As just saying,
I changed the extra damage to psychic damage.
And I also changed the mechanic a little bit for why you would get that extra damage and why it would have.
Yeah, well, that's not a mechanic. That's just flavor text.
Okay, well, so then I reskinned it to be a psionic revenant.
But no, that works. It's perfect because it does. It's impactful on your players. It's impactful in the game. Like you didn't do a whole lot of extra work. How long did it take you to how much did you rewrite down on that monster? How long did that take you? Like what? I don't know, 15 seconds?
It wasn't very long, no.
No, you could have did it on the fly. You didn't have to prep that.
In fact, the memory loss, like the childhood kind of trauma, I just added that in at the end.
Oh yeah, so
that was like while I was rolling the damage. I'm like, and you feel this way.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? And the reason why I bring it up, one, because it's just funny to break your balls, but two, no. In all honesty, like no one, like you, the part that you actually did as the extra work wasn't the part that your players probably even appreciated. It was the part you threw in as an ad lib on the end.
Yeah,
that probably really resonated the most with them.
Yes,
you know,
they definitely liked that aspect of it. They were really.
You can spend tons of time writing, templates and building monsters, but at the end of the day, will your players even notice? Right. And most of the time, I'm telling you, they're not. After doing this for 30 some years plus, they're not going to notice, and they're not even going to care that you put that extra work in. What they're going to notice is what happens at the table.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you don't have to do that extra work. You can just, if you just do it through your description, which you can do on the spot, or if you need to write down a few sentences or a couple keywords, when you're planning your adventure, you can have the same impact or more than as if you spent hours upon hours handcrafting these marvelous monsters that have only one purpose in your game, which is to die, right? No, that's
to be interesting and die.
Yeah, be interesting, a little bit interesting before they die.
I spent a whole lot more work on the dwarven zombies and splint mail that were made by a necromancer than I spent on that revenant, and the revenant was way more impactful.
So like, what are the takeaways? And I got a lot of really good tips from Sly Flourishes, which is Michael Shea, the Lazy Dungeon Master. Is like a lot of this stuff that you're going to put extra work into, it's either not going to get used, it's not going to get noticed, it's not going to get appreciated. Right. But it does create a lot of extra work for you. So
it does create.
If that's what you're into, go for it.
It does create DM angst too, because you're just like, they don't care.
They don't love me. Love my monster.
I did 5 hours of work, and they just brushed over it and went the other way.
You guys have been gaming with me for a while, and my my willingness to want to create new monsters and put things in there that are interesting and different. Not only from the mechanical standpoint, so that players don't know what they can do, and they're not going to be like, well, it says here, but also to have something that's unique and interesting that players haven't encountered. But with 5th edition, it's kind of just almost too easy to say, okay, well, what's something that's close in power? Use those stats and just see how it looks visually, and if you've got to make a minor modification, by adding a different type of an attack or a different ability, you can do that, and it's much easier than just building it from the ground up.
You could literally take a monster like the orc, who they naturally do extra damage, I believe, or at least the different ones do, and just describe it as a rotting orc corpse. Do the it's undead, so it doesn't need to eat, breathe, or sleep, and describe that extra damage as necrotic damage instead of some other kind of damage. If you want to give it resistance to necrotic damage or something along those lines, poof, you've got an instant undead.
Resistance to necrotic, vulnerability to radiant.
Well, maybe you don't even have to do that. I mean, they don't all have it. All I'm saying is, with those couple tweaks, you have a brand new monster. And your players may or may not know. If you want to make them more like zombies, just give them the zombie ability.
Yeah.
If when they would normally drop to 0, they get to make the check to not drop.
Right.
And make them a little slower.
And
I recommend making.
Well, no, only if you want to. I mean,
well, yeah,
we're making a new undead.
This is true.
So for that extra ability,
you had the dead character that. Varus,
yeah.
Yeah, so Varus died in the campaign,
and
you made him a blood zombie, basically,
I took the ogre zombie out of the monster manual, and I modified that based on what Varus was. So he fought, so he swung a great sword. He had slightly better stats, and that's just what I rolled with.
And it was very hard to kill. Because he turned into a pile of blood when he, puddle of blood.
Yeah, when he hit 0,
that was just thematic.
Yeah, that was just a visual situation.
Yeah.
But other than that, almost everything was right out of what the ogre zombie is.
And that's kind of my point. I ran an Eberron game where I used Dogrims and Doggaunts, right? And I was kind of looking at the 3rd edition stats and stuff, but then for some of their abilities and stuff, but for the most part, I just used goblins and hobgoblins for the stats, because and used those other descriptions and some of their abilities, but not most of them. So I feel like there's a whole lot of extra work you could put into things, but there's no reason to do it. So as far as come up with templates and stuff like that, don't bother. You can really just boil it down. What is it you're trying to convey with this monster? Why is it that you feel you need a way to make the undead interesting? And one, do it through description mainly because it requires less work on your part, and your players will actually appreciate it more. And 2, just pick 1 or 2 abilities from that thing that you're trying to convey. If you're going with a theme, well, pick some things from that, from that monster to make it seem that way, or just use that monster and pick some things from some undead traits and slap it onto that monster.
Now,
vice versa.
The other side of this question, potentially, is, how to spice it up. Could they be looking for how to make it more interesting than just it's a rove of hoarding, a horde of roving skeletons or zombies coming at you. If that is your question, then you want to.
I felt like he's running
counter-wise.
I thought felt like he was running an undead campaign, and he wanted the individual undead monsters in that campaign to be more interesting. And he was talking about using templates, and thing, and change the monsters and not just reskinning them. But but I don't understand why you would even want to remove reskinning them from the table when it's the easiest way to actually spice up the monster and really get your players engaged in it. And you can do things too, if you're running on that campaign, as the pregame progresses, have NPCs that the characters that interacted with and possibly come back as some of the undead.
No, absolutely.
So you can definitely do things like that as well.
So did we cover this one?
I would say as a last note, with the idea of the work you do behind the scenes, behind the DM screen, basically it can look like total junk behind the DM screen and look like you're holding up things with pieces of sticks and stuff. But it really depends on what the people on the other side of that DM screen feel perception-wise about what your game is. Because at the end of the day, it's not how much work you put in it, like David's saying, but their perception of the value you're giving them. As
yeah, you can give them the wow factor, like, oh my god, he spent hours and hours working on this without actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Or you can go the other way and spend hours and hours of time prepping it, and with them going,
and your players not care.
And when you say, well, I spent like 5 hours on this, just be like, oh, you did? You ruin the DM mystique, I think, when you start describing all the stuff that you do for something.
Yeah.
For your players that are playing.
No, they just want to show up, roll dice, have fun.
Yeah.
And you know, you should get as close to that baseline as you can. So that you can enjoy the game more. So it isn't like, all right, for the 4 hours that you're going to enjoy the game, you're doing another 8 hours of prep work. Well, and and a lot of times you're working on things that don't even matter.
Yeah, that won't count in the end of how much fun they've had.
There was a time I did that.
We all have. By the way, go over to nerdarchy.com. In our sidebar somewhere, there's a link to Sly Flourish's book, The Lazy DM. Pick it up. It's dirt cheap, and it's chock full of great ideas.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So you don't do too much work and have your players not care anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to get burnt out. You want to have fun like they're having fun.
So what do you guys think? If you have any tips that you want to share, how to make Undead spiced up or more interesting, put them in the comments below. While you're doing that, feel free to like, share, subscribe.
And while you're at it, Nerdarchy now is on Patreon, so you can Patreon us in a good way. And hey, as little as $1 a month goes a long way and helps us out. We appreciate it.
You can also check out all the great articles on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.